All right, coming to you live from a blah 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 blah. We are the survivors. Blah blah blah. Come and the few, the brave, the
Muddy
bitchy.
Metropolis.
Muddy, but well, where I am, it's actually nice and sunny, a little cool because it's Virginia, which just means we're gonna have a super brutal summer. And yeah, it's with Rantzerker number 237, Jeff Younger, and the fight for his son. And my name is Brian. I'm here with Allison. Not Allison. See, I always say that. I'm so programmed. I'm here with Karen and Hannah. Yeah, I'm here with Karen and Hannah. Allison is not available for this one, but I think we have more than enough mouths to speak on this topic. And before we get into it, I just want to say that I was looking at a couple of different subjects for potential today. So maybe I'll just drop them so that like Karen or Hannah can drop what their initial desires to speak to them are before we get into the main subject, which is a really great video that I'm really glad exists. But I almost went with the story of Harry Sisson and the 11 or so women that came out and making allegations against him. And I was going to call it Restart the Clock because I don't know if you guys remember back in the days of Gamergate, all of these guys that were male feminists that were throwing allegations about, impugning the gamers that were
toxic masculinity and misogyny and all
and then
that.
It comes out, of course,
total pervs.
Yeah, they turn out to be pervs, right?
They turn out to be pervs, or their lady friends all turn out to be false accusers.
That's also a problem that Harry Sisson is dealing with.
I have heard at least two people propose that this which I consider a controversy, right?
Yeah,
that this entire Harry Sisson controversy is a psyop to convince young men that Harry Sisson is straight and a player, so that they can win Gen Z men who actually have testicles that produce testosterone, right, to come back to the Democratic Party.
No good.
Yeah. I think it's what it's going to have.
Andrew Tate. He's the new Andrew Tate, don't you know?
Yeah. And speaking of Andrew Tate, the other topic I almost picked was us looking at talking about this new Netflix series called Adolescence. I don't know if you guys saw the trailers.
Yeah, we looked at
around
the trailer last night on HBO.
Yeah,
I heard about it.
Yeah.
And so it's basically it's about a boy in Great Britain that stabbed a girl to death, and it's the investigation around this killing, and apparently based on an actual events that happened in Britain, except because Netflix does what Netflix does. See, they race swapped all the characters, so the person who did it is white in the show.
They didn't just race swap.
No,
there's a whole big. Well, not everybody does know though.
Oh yeah,
they've come out and they've said we race swapped this. Which, it makes it sound like, well, the kid that did the stabbing for exactly the same reasons that they apply to this kid. No. In the Britain, stabbings were a culture clash between immigrants and natives. Okay. And what they made this psyop about was this kid is influenced by the manosphere, and he thinks things that the public is supposed to believe incels think.
Yes.
And so he stabs this girl.
And the alt-right.
So it's a
the alt-right, incels, Andrew Tate, Nick Fuentes types.
In the trailer that we watched, they specifically cited the 80% of girls going for the top 20% of guys thing.
Yeah.
And then said you have to trick them to get with them. And I'm like, yeah, that's straight out of what these British documentaries are trying to say about incels. So, and they've already taken it into Parliament, and they're already trying to make laws based on that.
They want, and they're insisting that this be shown in schools, all over the country. So, yeah.
Okay, they race swapped it. Okay, so what was the race of the original person?
He was an immigrant, from
Muslim?
I think he's it was a Muslim.
I think in Britain they have to say Asian.
Yeah, and he looked African to me.
Yeah.
But Muslim most likely.
African Muslims.
Yeah.
So there's not just been one, there's been several incidents, and
Oh yeah.
they have been racial incidents,
Mm-hmm.
not just gender-based incidents. And so what they're trying to do is control the narrative. They wanted a particular thing to talk about, and it didn't happen, so they made a show about it. Netflix has been doing this.
So
If you
so
want to see
this
more of
this
that, watch Equalizer, and you'll see every
Mm-hmm.
narrative that the news media has talked about in like the last 5 or 6 years. They've done a show where that narrative, they're what they wish was the really real thing that happened, so that they could condemn certain groups of people and make certain groups of people out to be angels, has been the theme of each episode for at least a few seasons. And they're just trying to use shows to reprogram people's beliefs about what has been happening and what is happening, and it'll
Yeah.
work on some people.
Yeah.
ugh.
Well, go ahead, Karen. What were you gonna say? Anything?
Oh, I was just gonna say, so like instead of so they just basically they changed everything. So they took like
Mhm.
probably a Muslim guy, right, from Africa, from like Somalia or like freaking Eritrea or wherever, right? They took him, and he like got radicalized on like freaking
The
Muslim
red pill. The
radical
men.
fucking
Oh yeah, yeah. The original. Sure. Yeah.
websites. Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
then they just switched it to like some white kid who was radicalized by like
Andrew Tate.
ADF or like
Yeah.
Like
AFD rather,
yeah.
Alternative for Deutschland or whatever, right? Like
No,
some
no. It's
or
literally the
like or
manosphere.
yeah,
That's what
The
they
no,
changed it to.
manosphere.
the manosphere and Brexit
Yeah.
got to him,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right?
That's
Yeah,
right. That's what
yeah,
happened. Yeah.
And he stabs a
and
girl in his
and
class, and she dies, and he gets basically
Yeah.
swatted. Which, like the beginning of the show, we were talking about that because getting arrested in Britain apparently is like getting swatted in the U.S.
Yeah.
So, like,
Yeah.
they broke down their door, and like a whole bunch of cops there, and
flashbang
they're
grenade
really
straight into the baby's crib, shoot
like
the
Yeah.
it's
dog.
A
really
robot, like 10
yeah.
dogs and a robot come in. But anyway, I
Mike's
didn't
like, yeah, all you
go.
have to do is
Yeah.
type in
I,
online, and there they are.
I didn't. Yeah. So I didn't go with any of
Shoot the
that because
family's toy poodle,
what I
Yeah.
found was so much better. So we're going to be looking at today, there's a YouTube channel called Soft
Okay,
White Underbelly. What
okay,
go
so
ahead.
we're okay, so much better in what way? Is it
Well,
Better in
heartwarming?
that it's
Is it
worse.
something that we're going to
no.
be like, "Oh, well
Well,
this is
it's
actually
gonna
these people are actually making sense cuz like I don't have like
We're
you
gonna be
need to
listening
find
to Jeff Younger
something.
talk.
yeah, we're gonna
Yeah,
get to
but
hear Jeff Younger's side of the story, which we haven't yet. And the fact
That
that
makes
Soft
sense.
White Underbelly allowed him to tell his, I mean, look, his story isn't good. It's a nightmare. But
Yeah.
the
yeah,
fact that
I know, but
Jeff Younger was allowed to go on this platform, which by the way has 6.3 million subscribers. So a lot of people are getting to see this. That's what I think is good about it. And we're learning the truth of what's going on here. So it is a dark
yeah,
story,
but
but
I mean,
it's
like, I didn't sign on to just agree with everything that's being said in the video.
no, I think that
No.
it's more about like
I agree.
what might be exposed by this, and maybe there's something you guys can add.
Okay.
I'm sure there is
All
because
right.
that's what you're good at. So okay, so I got some.
All
Let's
right.
start open up with this, and this is really going to be like about family courts. It's interesting. I'm really glad that he got to be on this show. He might get into some legal trouble though over it because we'll go
Probably.
into there was some he
Gag
was
order.
banned from speaking. Yeah, gag orders on him. So but let's listen to the intro part.
Okay.
The state of California says that I have to pay for the chemical and physical castration of my son as child support. I'm not going to pay that child support. I'm not going to pay anything to hurt my son.
And that means you'll be going to prison?
California is going to send me to prison for that.
All right, so there's like I don't know. Did you guys know this in the chat that he has to the child support money he's paying is for the transition surgery for his son who is now on puberty blockers. By the way, his son's already absolutely screwed. in that front. But this is like I didn't know that you could use child support to force this stuff. It's kind of wild. Yeah.
You
no,
can, a judge
the
in the United
custodial
States,
parent can use it for anything.
in the United States, a judge can order a parent to pay medical bills. He can order him to pay extra for activities that the mother enrolls the child in. He can order him to pay daycare, even if the father would rather that the child come to his house during the mother's work hours. The judge can order the father to pay anything that the mother hands the court as a bill for the child's care, even if the father doesn't approve, even if the father objects, even if there's not a valid reason why the mother can, should be enrolling the child in this, and there's huge contention. And we've seen a judge order a parent to order consent. These things, you should not have the phrase order to consent in the English language. If it's by order, it's not consent. But we've seen a judge order a parent to consent to a child experiencing genital mutilation.
Wow.
I don't know if you guys remember, his name was Chase.
And
the judge ordered, this was the mother fighting it in this instance. The judge ordered her to sign papers consenting, and ordered her to sign away his right to sue later on as an adult if he objected that shouldn't have been done to him. And then a few years later,
he was like 4 or 5.
Yeah. The worst part of it was, like, he went through that. He was terrified. And he went through that. And then a few years later, he coincidentally got leukemia and died.
Oh.
So that was his short life experience, was this judge forcing him to go through circumcision when he was old enough to consciously remember the recovery and too young to consent. And his mom was actually put in prison for refusing to consent until she, like, it was.
I remember seeing her sobbing on the witness stand in court.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
all right,
and that was Florida.
Let's listen to this. Is like the intro bit where he talks to the interviewer on Soft White Underbelly about essentially like the divorce and everything.
So Jeff, you are going through something. You've been going through something that is probably a father's worst nightmare.
Yeah.
Tell me when this started.
Started when my son was about 2 years old. My ex-wife, who's a pediatrician in Capel, Texas, started thinking that he might be a girl and started trying to transition him to a girl. And when I tried to put a stop to that, she filed for divorce and used her relationships with care providers to force me out of my house. And
so she was a pediatrician.
No. See, okay. Like, let's talk about child development here a little bit, okay? Because yes, babies can recognize the difference between adult male and adult female voices on day one. They can. On day one, right? Immediate in the womb, they can recognize the difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
And respond differently to them, right? By about 3 months, they can distinguish between adult male and adult female faces. That doesn't mean they know what gender they are, okay? That just means they know they respond one way to a typically female face, and one way to a typically male face and voice, right? They don't even start developing a self-concept, right? Until they're about 3 years old, right? When they'll go from, I have a dog and I like trains, okay? Like that's like an integration of, this is who I am, right? I have a dog and I like trains, right? So they, as opposed to like just the general freaking basic shit, like I'm hungry, I'm uncomfortable, I'm too hot, I'm too cold, right? I'm in pain, whatever. Okay, those things, right? So they're starting at age 3 to develop a concept of who is me, not what am I experiencing in this moment, but who am I, right? 3 years old is when they start, right? And they don't finish that. And when I say finish, I mean it hasn't completely gelled, but it's gelatinous. It's like semi-solid, right? By age 8. 8.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah.
No kid knows what gender they are at age 2, right? Unless it's because their parent told them, well, girls have a vagina and boys have a penis.
Yep.
2-year-olds
And then
don't
they're like,
even
okay,
always
so I'm a
understand.
boy.
A 2-year-old doesn't even always understand that if they do something to another person and it doesn't hurt their body when they do it, that it can still hurt the other person. A 2-year-old
Yeah, no,
can
it's
bite
like
you and not
kids
understand that
bite.
that hurts you, right?
Yeah,
They
kids
don't
bite
understand it
all
because
the
it
time.
doesn't hurt them. So they don't understand that it hurts you. It's an instinctive behavior. But I remember that conversation with my little brother because I was older than him. And he was slightly under 2. But yeah, mom very, very gently, but she's, put her teeth on his wrist and was like,
Yeah.
a little bit. And he goes like, Mommy, don't, that hurts. And no, it hurts Hannah when you do it too. No, it doesn't. He didn't understand because it didn't hurt him when he did it to me. So it must not have hurted me either. Right. Like that was his idea.
Yeah, no,
And
my
yeah.
daughter was a biter, and like she wasn't a biter out of like malice. It was almost like giving a hug, right?
Yeah.
She'd like bite my arm. And finally I just bit her back. And and I said, that's how that feels, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't bite her gently. I bit her hard, right? I bit her as hard as she bit
Yeah.
me. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I was like,
my mom
that's
didn't
how
want to
that
do that
feels.
because my brother was very. Imagine if you took Elliot from ET and made him cuter, like just
Oh, yeah,
even a
no, my
more
daughter was
adorable
like
little kid.
super
So,
fucking my daughter was super fucking adorable, and she was super cute, and she was
yeah,
super like quirky and wacky, and like and everybody was like, oh, what a cool kid, she's so
yeah,
weird, and and crazy, and like and she's so adventurous and spunky, and and I was like, yeah, no, wait till she bites you. But
like that was
you
the only
know
time my
I'll
brother
be
ever bit
singing
me.
a
He never did
different
it again
tune.
after that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it takes you had to demonstrate things for a 2-year-old to understand. So if a 2-year-old thinks that they're the opposite sex, the other thing is
It's because you've
if you
suggested it to
play
them.
pretend with a 2-year-old and you pretend to be a T-Rex with a 2-year-old, a 2-year-old will not understand the difference between pretending to be a T-Rex and being a T-Rex. They will carry on the pretense all day. And then, at bedtime, it will be you. T-Rexes don't go to sleep, and T-Rexes get to stay up till midnight. And you
Yeah.
have to,
No, and this is why you have kids who are like 4 or 5 years old who will like literally tell you they want to be a dinosaur when they grow up.
And so if you're dealing with a 2-year-old that says, I want to be a girl, it's a passing fancy. It's not something that the child believes. It is something that's not going to last. It is not something that the child fully understands. Heck, a 2-year-old doesn't even understand that girls and boys are different from each other in specific
They
ways.
don't even understand. Like, why can't I be a dog?
It's already bad enough that because she's a girl is given to boys as a reason at 2 years old why they can't do this or that, or why she gets to do this or that, because they don't understand girl is different from boy. And then they're told, well, she gets to go first. She's a girl, ladies first. Or, yeah, she hit you, but you can't hit her back. She's a girl. You're bigger. and they're not bigger at 2 years old.
Yeah. No.
And so it's, well, my brother
Yeah.
was, but my brother was bigger than the other boys at his age too. He was bigger than the boys my age.
Yeah.
But and that continued all of his life.
Well,
He's a big guy. But
Yeah.
but in any case, yeah, they don't. There's a lot of stuff that's not cemented. So if you have a girl or a boy thinking he's a girl at 2 years old, and you lean into
because
that,
an adult. It's because an adult in a position
Yeah.
of trust told him.
yeah, or is playing pretend with him, and doesn't understand herself the difference between fantasy and reality. Which honestly, if
Oh, it's
my
infuriating.
son's pediatrician was doing that with her child, I would go back and re-examine every decision that doctor made with my child.
Mhm.
I wouldn't just
Absolutely.
consider her a bad parent. I would also consider her a bad doctor. And
Doctor.
I would be very
Absolutely.
concerned about every decision that had been made with my child. I would be looking for any little mistake, because if there was something that I thought was done wrong to my child by a parent that was that bad of a doctor, I might sue.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's play a little bit more of this one, and then we're gonna jump into the legal battles that he got into.
And, so I moved about a mile up the road from my sons. She filed for divorce formally, and I had 50-50 custody of him. And just after his third birthday, you know, I took the first iPhone video I'd ever taken, and it was him telling me that he thought he was a girl because his mommy tells him a girl. You can go on YouTube and just search for "Mommy Says I'm a Girl." You'll find that video. She was telling him things like, you know, she would put him into timeout and say, "Don't be a boy. The monsters only eat boys," and weird things like this. And she began to then socially transition him, and that led to a titanic battle in the state of Texas that culminated in me getting the procedures outlawed in Texas. And
So yeah, so he got the procedures outlawed in Texas, but that's why she took the kids to California. But anyway, let's play the rest of the clip.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
no,
sanctuary
the
state.
state.
Yeah.
the political establishment
Yeah.
in Texas allowing her to come to California so she could still castrate him even though I got it outlawed.
Had your son, you have two sons.
I have two sons, James and Jude. They're twins. They're not identical. James is the one that she's transitioning.
And was there any sign in James that he was open to this or showing signs that he wanted to be anything other than
Well, you know, it's interesting. So he was a
Or I'm just pausing there for the banana. I don't know if you want to get into that bit.
Yeah,
where
no.
Yeah,
His
little
mom
boys.
basically just like trained him to like act and dress and behave like a girl when he was with her, but when he was with dad, he would, you know, like his dad would just let him do whatever, and he would just be a boy. And
Little
even when
boys
his
will,
Yeah, no.
little
His
boys
dad
will
would put
idealize their moms. This is something
Dad
little
would-
girls will idealize their dads, and because of that, when mom says, "This is what I want you to be," that puts a bee in his bonnet. That is enough to make him feel like he has to do it, and they'll please whatever parent they're with at the time. But I think that if his dad had tried to make him be a girl and his mom had been the one objecting, he'd have been going to mom for help, and he'd have been fighting with his dad about it. He'd have rebelled a little more. It's more insidious particularly with little boys when women do this.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and you like when it's the fact that it's twins, right? Like she's got some kind of plausible deniability going on because she's got twin boys, and she's only trying to transition the one who's actually a girl. She's not trying to transition the other one. And it's just like, yeah, no. So she's
Makes
she's
it
got
seem
that,
like some kind of Nazi experiment. What happens if we take twins and we transition one of them?
All right.
Yeah, well,
By the way, guys, if you want to send us a message, just go to feedthebadger.com/just the tip. That will allow you to send a longer message, and it won't be edited or censored by YouTube. Okay, so let's listen to the next bit.
And do you have contact with your sons now?
No, I'm disallowed all contact with my sons.
You're not allowed to even contact them?
No. I'll tell you how this all sort of built up. So she started transitioning him, really hardcore at 3. I mean, where she presented him to the world with a fake girl's name and everything. This, of course, would have been an important component in the divorce that was going on. So we get to 2017, and we have our divorce trial, and we had a custody evaluator. His name is Blake Mitchell. He practices out of Frisco, Texas, which is a suburb of Dallas. And he asked me, what is your top issue? And I said, my top issue is she's tampering with my son's gender identity. So he charges me $60,000 and does a 1-year investigation of my family, interviewing my children over and over again, everything, and determines that she was not transitioning my son to a girl.
Oh, well,
What?
I guess that's it then.
Yeah. There's an easy way to make that happen, though. If you're dealing with a guardian ad litem or a friend of the court, all you have to do is hide everything during the process of dealing with that individual. I've seen friends through divorces where a guardian ad litem was involved and watched the other side put information where the guardian ad litem could not get it. And if we hadn't been able to expose that same information, we would have had a similar result where the guardian ad litem said, oh, she's making stuff up. She's making stuff up. Like, no, here's our receipts for it. Here's our proof. And so this information was hidden from you when you talk to the other side. Well, if it's medical records, it's a lot harder to do that, right? If the mom is taking the kid to a doctor that the dad doesn't know about, if the mom's doing the treatment and just doesn't hand over the records, then whether they use different terms are used for this position. In Ohio, it's guardian ad litem. In some other places, it's friend of the court. There's another name in other states, but it's basically the same thing. It's supposed to be an independent party. The court has examined the case from the outside this is supposed to be the child's advocate. So with the child's interest in mind and a complete lack of bias toward the parents. But often they're biased toward the mother. And they all get training to be biased toward the mother. So, it's very possible that all she had to do was hide things and lie. And of course, the individual wouldn't get the full picture and would say it wasn't happening. But it's been reported in the news enough that it is happening. That person's probably feeling like an idiot now.
All right. So he paid a guy $60,000 to investigate, and he did all these interviews and concluded that the woman was actually not the thing that was happening was not actually happening. So what happened next?
Straight up lied to the court and said that I had made a false accusation against her for saying that she was trying to transition my son to a girl. And on that basis, I lost 50-50 custody and got less than standard possession time. So I basically got, 4 to 6 days a month with my sons. So that's how the divorce ended, with the psychologist just outright lying. Now, I've been lucky with these psychologists that lie. I've been able to prove they've lied, so the court actually set aside his report. But that's what he actually told the court in his report. So she then starts really ramping up it again, and now he's wearing makeup to school. He's using the girls' restroom at his elementary school, which was Pinkerton Middle School in Coppell, Texas.
Who the fuck wears makeup to elementary school?
Trans girls, apparently.
Kids whose moms don't know the difference between children and purse puppies.
Like, my parents, it was middle school. Middle school was the first I was allowed to wear makeup outside the house. Right? You know, you could play with mom's makeup in the house, and on Halloween, if you were like going as a princess or something,
Yeah.
you know, but yeah, no, you weren't allowed to wear makeup to school in like K through 6.
Yeah.
Like,
I
what
mean,
the?
when I was in school, they would have washed it off, you know, unless you
Yeah.
were going to do. Little girls would sometimes wear lipstick if they were going to be in an auditorium up on a stage singing for the parents. But
Yeah.
not me though, because I'm allergic to everything good. Like all the girls, I wasn't allowed to wear makeup until I wasn't allowed to wear makeup until I was no years old, because the first time I put makeup on, my whole face turned into a minefield of hives.
Yeah, sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah, I tried though.
No,
I found
my husband's the
hypoallergenic
same
makeup.
way. So.
I think I was in high school. I did it for like 2 or 3 weeks, and it was just like, nope, this is never gonna work. Everything I put on itches, even the hypoallergenic stuff. So I never had to pay for any of that stuff. It saved me like $150 a month from
Yep.
standing what girls spend on that shit. Like, why
Oh
would you
God, yeah.
inflict that on a boy? He's already spending his money on important things. Why would you talk him into spending makeup on his money on makeup when he gets older? Like, what a stupid thing to do to your son. Even if it wasn't
Yeah.
stupid to go through all of the other stuff, you know, the sterilization
Well,
and all that. Like, why would you inflict that hardship on him?
well, you know, like this is what gets me, right? Is that, you know, when God damn it. Whenever I talk about these issues, right? I basically say, like, I would never want any of my kids to be gay. Right? It's not like I would love them less if they were, right? It's not like I have something against gay people, right? It's just because it complicates your life,
Yeah.
right? Like your
It's one
dating pool
reason
is
people might be mean to them.
your date. Well, yeah, it's a reason people might be mean to them, but
It's
it's
also a
also like
reason why it might be hard to find a partner. Yeah.
your dating pool is smaller and family formation is harder, and you're never going to be able to, if you marry someone of the same sex, you're never going to be able to have a child that carries both of your genes, right? Like it complicates your life, right? Well, trans is like that times 100,
Yeah.
right? It's
Well,
that
it's
times
a
100.
lifelong medical condition. I mean,
Yeah, no,
once you
a
medically
lifetime of
transition,
hormone replacement therapy, right?
right?
You know, and you've had surgery, you've had top surgery, you've had bottom surgery. So even if you changed your mind and wanted to detransition, you won't be
There's no
able to
going
like
back.
have a baby or breastfeed it. You know, like there's no going back from that. There's no changing your mind, right? Puberty blockers, they're like, well, there's a window for puberty. Right? They're like, oh, you know, like they're reversible. Yeah, not beyond a certain point. Not beyond a certain point. Right? And they've got this new thing, which is like a vaginoplasty made out of anal tissue, like out of rectal tissue. It's like a bowel resection, right? That they use to build the neo-vagina, right? Why? Because puberty blockers don't leave you with enough penis to turn inside out and turn into a vagina. Right? So it's like now they have to like start harvesting portions of your fucking bowel. Well, you have that bowel in your bowel for a reason. Right? So now you're fucking with your digestive tract, you're fucking with your colon, and then wow, sometimes you can't get rid of those gut bacteria that live in your colon. And so your vagina smells like farts. If it even takes and doesn't rot out of you. There's like a 57% complication rate with gender transition surgeries.
Yeah.
Right? Where like the surgery didn't take, right? The vaginoplasty didn't take, right? You didn't dilate daily often enough. right? 3 times a day, you got to insert a big dildo into your neovagina to keep the wound from closing
Healing.
naturally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you have to do that. And if you miss a couple of days, well, then maybe you're fucked, right? And this is like, just why would you? And you can't have kids, right? Because you ripped out your ovaries and your uterus, right? Or you cut off your balls, right? You can't have fucking kids. You can't breastfeed them because you cut your tits off. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah. It's definitely not.
And you have
There's
a
a lot
vagina
of people
made out of fucking rectum.
Asshole.
There's a lot of people that don't adults that go through gender dysphoria and they transition outwardly. Like they dress differently. They might
Buck
have
Angel.
plastic surgery
Buck
on
Angel
their
is-
face,
Blair White.
right? And they might even have the top surgery.
Yeah.
But they don't have the bottom surgery because of that. Like Blair White has talked about that, not having the bottom surgery because of how complicated it is, because of how damaging it is, and because of how much maintenance is required afterward.
Yeah.
And that's an adult decision right there, right?
Yeah.
Just the decision.
That's a grown ass mature adult.
The decision when
making
to
a
go to
proper
college
decision.
is an adult decision, and you can switch universities if you don't like it. You can drop out of college. You can go to a school later if you
Trade
didn't.
school.
If you didn't go to college, like I could go to college now. I'm gonna be 53, and if I wanted to, I could go to college now, because I didn't finish when I was younger. But you can't do that with permanent surgery. You can't do that with transitioning. You could do that with getting married, which is an adult decision. We don't let 5-year-olds get married for a reason. I know some countries do, but we do not.
13-year-olds, yeah.
And in fact, people in our country are outraged that other countries do allow that. Even 13 years, a 15-year-old generally can't get married. It's a very rare thing for even a 15-year-old, even if they get pregnant out of wedlock, to be able to get married, all right, before they're an adult. But we're letting kids make this decision, or rather moms inflict this decision on their kids, because this is a mom thing for the most part. At 5 or at 2, and then they're starting to get ready to have surgery, and then when they get into their early adolescence, they put them through what Karen just described before they're even really old enough to understand well enough. You can't buy a beer at that age. You can't smoke a cigarette at that age. If somebody
can't
has
drive a
sex
car,
with you,
can't volunteer to give your life for your country.
if somebody has sex with you at that age, they go to jail.
Yep.
Right. But you can get your genitalia cut off, turned inside out. You can have it's just as bad for the female to male transition. They take flesh from the arm to make the penis.
Oh,
and
God, it's so gross, man. So gross.
And
It's
they
not
have
just
like
gross,
this little
surgery
hydraulic.
hurts.
I mean, yeah, surgery sucks.
They have like
yeah.
a hydraulic device, right? Okay, so they fill your testicles full of like fluid, okay, and then they have like a hydraulic system inside the neophallus, okay, and then so when you want to get an erection, you have to squish your balls over and over and over again to pump that fluid
like
into
those old those Air
neophallus.
Jordans that had the pump on them, those shoes.
Or like
Remember
a
the shoes
balloon
you had to
animal.
pump up? Yeah,
Yeah,
or like
like
a balloon animal, yeah.
Like a balloon animal, right? And then like when you're done, which who knows when that is? I guess when she gets off, because you're not going to be getting off, right? And all these like freaking transitioning doctors and stuff, right? They're like, oh, we just don't understand why a phallus made out of your arm skin doesn't give you orgasms.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's listen to more. I know
God.
it's twisted. Let's listen to more.
Doesn't exist anymore in Capel. They shut down. got rid of the principal there. Her name is Miss Mickelson, who's the one that really transitioned my son. And I found out after 2.5 years, they had been transitioning my son secretly behind my back. So I would bring my son to Pinkerton Middle School in Capel in boys' clothes, because he wears boys' clothes with me. And they would give him a dress and tell him to use the girls' bathroom. And when I found that out, I filed grievances against the public school. And of course, they exonerated themselves, saying that under their nicknames policy, they're allowed to call him whatever he wants. And they're allowed to put him in dresses because he wants to wear it and it doesn't harm him in any way.
Yeah, if you tell him he wants to do something, then you get to say that he wants to do it because you're the adults.
Yeah, no, I'm just like this is infuriating, right? Because, you know, when hell froze over and the NDP won a landslide in Alberta here, which is Canada's Texas, right? And the NDP are further to the left than the Liberals, but we were sick of 40 years of Conservative Party corruption, right? So there was a big rebellion, and May 5th, 2015, the day after the election, I woke up, there was like freaking 5 inches of snow on the ground. I was like, oh, hell has frozen over. And then I checked the news and I was like, oh, it really has, right? The NDP won in a landslide, right? And they passed a law basically banning schools from notifying parents if their kids came out as gay.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember
Yeah.
that. And the Canadian government made some policy so they can take your kids from you if you don't affirm their gender. Like that the state can take your kids from you. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and the issue with the Canadian Medical Association, they sent down directives, right? Guidance, they call it, right, to family doctors in Canada, because the waiting lists for trans youth to get gender therapy, right, gender affirming therapy at actual gender clinics in Canada increased tenfold in 10 years, right, between 2007 and 2017. So, and they were like, okay, so, well, you shouldn't be afraid to prescribe puberty blockers because you want to give the kid some time to make up his mind or her mind, right? Before
I
any
disagree with the
permanent
term puberty blockers.
Okay, yeah, me too. But you need to give the kids some time to make up their mind, right? You know, and this will buy them time before any permanent physical changes are made. But in the next fucking paragraph, they said, but you should also not be afraid to prescribe cross-sex hormone therapy as early as 13, because which would cause permanent changes, right? That can't be reversed, because kids want to go through puberty at the same time as their peers. And they don't want to be like the odd person out who's not actually going through puberty. So you shouldn't be afraid to do that either. So either we're buying time so that no permanent changes take place, or we're rushing in to make the permanent changes based on the whim of the kid who doesn't want to be like the only boy in his class that doesn't have boobs, right? And I'm just like, I'm like none of this fucking, and it's all there, right? Guidance for family doctors, because you have to take a gender affirming approach. So if the kid says they're the opposite sex, you don't say, well, let's wait and see. You don't say, well, maybe go to a psychologist. You don't say any of that. You don't question them about it, right? You don't say, well, do you really feel that way? You know, do you think you might change your mind? You don't say any of that. No, you immediately affirm, right? And put them on some kind of fucking treatment.
You know, when I was in school, I had a classmate that had what was referred to as early puberty. Early puberty meant for her that she was by several years the first girl in the class to get breasts and a period. and
Yeah.
her doctor put her on hormones to delay. But one of the things that was said to her mother was, this is happening more frequently now because we have proper nutrition available. And so girls are going into puberty overall earlier. And
Proper nutrition?
yes,
I
proper
don't think
nutrition.
so.
No, he was right. And I'll give you the rest of the story. Because the rest of the story isn't necessarily about this girl, but certain things get delayed if you are in a famine situation, or if you are in a lower nutrition situation. Certain things get delayed when children are growing up. And because it's become easier and easier for humans to feed themselves over the centuries, we do get earlier puberty physically. Obviously, our psychological development has gone in the other direction, where we develop a little more slowly than we did historically. And so his solution was drugs. But when I was in high school, the one athletic team that we had a really rough time against, my class had a really rough, we were a bigger school than they were. The girls on that team were coached by a lady named Katie Horstman, who was one of the original baseball players from the girls' baseball teams back in the day. And in fact, who coached Madonna for the movie A League of Their Own.
Oh.
And she actually was kind of funny because she said Madonna worked really hard for that. But so I had to throw some respect that direction, because I didn't always really like her very much. But it's good to hear, that at least she had some professionalism and worked really hard for that. But Katie Horstman had her team on a diet, and that diet actually delayed. When you're a female athlete in high school, during your puberty, your body shape starts to change. You get rounder. And so a lot of female athletes in high school will peak like their sophomore year, maybe their junior year, and then they have a really rough time their senior year. And so our senior years, when we're competing against seniors from her school, they were some of the hardest girls to compete against, because they didn't change as quickly as we did. And they maintained their peak through their senior years in high school. And it worked. So there is something to the changes in diet. So I'm not even sure. It has to be an extreme case before a doctor should even resort to drugs.
Well, because they're
anything like early
they're cancer
puberty
drugs
or anything like that. Well, yeah, they can cause cancer.
Well, they're cancer drugs that were developed, the on-label use, the only on-label use of these drugs, right? Which is what pisses me off so much about the COVID stuff, right? And ivermectin's off-label, HCQ is off-label, right? And it's like, yeah, well, puberty blockers
are off-label.
Are off-label, and they're anti-cancer drugs. They're designed to slow the advancement of aggressive sex hormone-driven cancers.
Yeah.
So, estrogen-driven breast cancers and, testosterone-driven penile and testicular cancers and prostate cancers, right? That's what they're designed, aggressive cancers. They're designed to slow down the advancement by blocking the production of those hormones, right? There's never been a double-blinded randomized clinical trial on teens, and preteens for puberty blockers. And you know why? Because it would never pass a medical ethics board. Proposing such a trial on randomized young people would never pass an ethics board, right?
Yeah.
So instead of going through the ethics board and finding out whether it's ethical and whether it's effective and whether it's reversible and how it might turn out for people, right? Under a clinical setting, under a trial setting, right? Instead, we just experiment on the entire fucking population.
Yeah.
Of children.
I mean, it's, again, this is an adult decision. If adults want to go through this and do this, that's their choice. And that's their decision. Then the relationship they end up having with the rest of society, that's something that they're choosing to take on.
Yep.
And
That's
if you're
their
going
consequence.
to choose to go down a rough road to hoe, that's your right. But to do it to your child, that's not.
No.
All right, I'm gonna play more of the next clip here. Here we go. Looks like somebody's trying to call you, Karen. Okay, let's play it.
I call her Karen all the time.
Opposing counsel was a woman, was in the room. She threw her pen on the floor and quit the case. She left. It was so disgusting. And they were not going to put her in front of a Texas jury saying that. So they dropped her. So I won the 2019 trial. I got 50-50 custody. I got no child support. But the most important thing is I got a check on all medical procedures. So she could not chemically castrate him at age 8 or 9. Okay. By a few years later after this, I successfully got a law passed which outlawed these procedures. You could lose your medical license for doing these things.
In Texas, specifically, in Texas,
Mm-hmm.
where this happened.
So in that intervening 2 years,
In Texas.
in Texas, in that intervening 2 years, the judges, the liberal judges in Dallas County, Texas, got very upset that I got 50-50 custody and that James is not going to be transitioned. So they sua sponte moved my case from the 255th District Court into the 301st District Court with Judge
Jesus
Mary
fuck.
Brown, who all henceforth.
Well,
Sua
let's finish
sponte.
this. Yeah, let's
no,
move
sua
this up a
sponte
little.
means
Oh.
means nobody filed a motion to move jurisdiction. The judge just decided to do it
Mm-hmm.
without being asked
Hold on a
by
second.
anybody. Oh my God. This is fucking insane. This is insane. And let me see what the fuck my mother-in-law wants in the middle of the goddamn day.
And people are probably noticing now that judges are starting to interfere with Trump, but we've been having this problem with judges in the United States where if they have a particular political belief or angle, people will go judge shopping. They'll move jurisdictions. They'll use, they'll go to judges to get specific orders and specific, file with this judge to get this and file with that judge to get that. Vexatious litigants do this, and
Well, this
the
judge
7 years in hell case did this. But judges will
judge is-
step in and order things that they have no relationship to prior
Well,
to the.
nobody asked him.
Yeah.
Nobody asked this judge to do anything. Right?
Yeah,
The judge
they'll
just
step
did
in
it.
they'll step in and write an order. You can't do this, or you can't do that because it's in the news. And there's been other instances where that's happened that haven't made national news because they're not doing it to Trump, they're doing it to some private citizen. And the
Yeah.
only reason we know about this instance is because this case has blown up and been national news.
Yeah. All right, let's listen to some more of this clip. I think, it goes for a little while longer.
Call Bloody Mary Brown. Judge Bloody Mary Brown never gave me 50-50 custody, never gave me a check on the medical procedures, and never eliminated my child support. She completely ignored the jury verdict. And over a period of about 3 years, she systematically stripped me of all parental rights. And she used a technique that's very common in family court. First of all, she gave me an order that I couldn't follow. That's what they'll do. They'll give you an order that you just can't follow. So I was running for office in Texas. I ran for a Texas representative in House District 63. And I was in the middle of a campaign. And she issued a gag order on me, which gave me a lifetime ban on doing any podcast interviews, writing any newspaper articles, doing blog posts, posting videos, appearing in YouTube videos. It's a totally unconstitutional gag order. It also prohibited me from talking about 3 political topics. I could not talk about transgenderism, gender dysphoria, or gender expansiveness. And I was prohibited in public from telling anyone whether my son was a boy or a girl.
And again,
So-
this
Well-
is in the United States where we
Yeah.
have a constitutional amendment that says they cannot do that. You cannot interfere with the political speech of an individual, right? Harassment's not protected speech. You can't call somebody up 16 times in the middle of the night and cuss them out, right? That's not protected speech. But what he just talked about, if he were to go on any news show and say, I disagree with transgender ideology, the judge could have jailed him for violating the order. That's unconstitutional, because that's him saying this is my political perspective. And the entire reason for the existence of the free speech part of the First Amendment is to give citizens the right to political speech. It isn't about protecting your ability to cuss somebody out. It's not about protecting your ability to talk to specific people and make them listen to you. It's about your ability to articulate your political points of view and criticize your government and criticize your government officials and family court judges in particular. And I'm not going to go off on the family court the way that I want to, because that would just be the entire show. But family court judges in particular do have a habit of gag ordering people to the degree that they're not allowed to have any outlet to criticize the official who is affecting their lives and their family, their relationship with their kids. Judges will participate in parental alienation and then order the alienated parent to be silent about the case. They can't talk to friends and family. It interferes with their ability to obtain witnesses for their case. It interferes with their ability to obtain medical services for their case. It interferes with their ability to talk to anybody that might be able to assist with their side of the case outside of their attorney, who they can talk to because they have attorney-client privilege, and the attorney cannot then go into the judge and say, we talked about this. But they'll order them to be completely silent, and it gets bad enough that the only people that you can talk to are people who are not allowed to disclose what you said. Your attorney, your therapist, and your priest. And then your therapist can't even come into court and talk about how it's affecting you, because that breaks your gag order. And it's that bad. And they will give orders where the individual can't comply with the order. Oh, you make $60,000 a year, you have to pay $100,000 a year in child support and alimony. And well, you don't make that much, get another job, And I've seen people commit suicide because of this. And this is one of the primary causes of male suicide in the United States.
Oh yeah.
All right, let's listen to more.
They let this go for 18 months, which is a special benchmark in Texas, right? 18 months with no visitation. And then my ex-wife filed to move to California, saying that I had abandoned my sons because I wasn't visiting them. The judge said, well, Mr. Younger, we were perfectly allowed to go visit your sons. There was nothing stopping you from visiting your sons, and you just haven't done it. And I tell her, well, I would morally miseducate my son. I would be directly harming my son by using his girl's name and teaching him that he's a girl when he's not. And you would be forcing me to pay $500 per visit, which is what it costs, per visit. So I'd be using my resources to hurt my son. And I've told this court repeatedly, those three things I'm never going to do. And she said, well, I conclude that you have abandoned your sons because you had every opportunity to go visit them. This is the game they play. So Judge Bloody Mary Brown's then allowed my ex-wife to move my kids to California, since I had abandoned them in Texas, of course. Not to
Let me see if that's the rest of the time code. No, there's a little bit more to this, like another minute.
mention that I write them letters all the time. Every time they go into a new school grade, I ask them to tell me what they're studying. that I'm, I have a Substack and I write letters to them online all the time. None of this stuff is even in the orders. It was not even allowed to be entered into evidence. They said it was all hearsay.
And remember, there's a stat that feminists like to throw around with regards to custody battles. And the stat they like to throw is that very few fathers actually fight for custody. And when they do, they win like 90-something% of the time.
Yeah, no, it's
You guys
false
heard that?
statistic.
So
Absolutely false statistic.
If you want to see that stat soundly debunked, go to a blog
Website called Breaking the Science.
Yep,
Yeah.
breakingthescience.blogspot.org is the address, breakingthescience.blogspot.org. And it's the misrepresentation of the 1989 Massachusetts report. And what he found was that when women fight for custody, they actually have a higher rate of success. So when they say that when men fight for custody, they have a particular rate of success, that represents only instances where men are fighting for custody because the mother is a bad mother. Like where the mother is doing something really bad.
Only,
and there's more to it than that.
Yeah, not just that.
The mother is not fighting back in those cases.
The mother, okay, so in the initial divorce filing, okay, who files for custody? When men file for custody or file for divorce, right, they're less likely to initially, in that initial filing, make a demand for or a request for custody, right? Than women are.
Mm-hmm.
Women always include it in their initial filing, and women overwhelmingly are the initial filers, right? Okay. It doesn't say anything about it, only looks at the initial filings, right? Men go into a divorce when they file for divorce, they go into it thinking that it's something to be negotiated, right? They're not going to demand full physical custody from the get-go unless the mother is abusive, right? Or unfit, right? Women automatically do that.
Domain name.
Women automatically do that. And so they're only looking at the initial filings. They're not looking at like when she filed and for divorce and demanded full custody. They're not looking at his counter filing, right? Where he was like, actually, no, I want some physical custody, or I want, some level of joint. And then they define joint custody as, like it could be 50-50 physical custody, or it could be every Wednesday and every other weekend, Wednesday evenings and every other weekend, right? That is also considered to be joint custody. Right?
Okay, it's not for the record, it's not a Blogspot blog. It's breakingthescience.org, just breakingthescience.org, and it's Mark Rosenthal's blog.
Yeah.
And
he does an excellent job of breaking down how even when they ignore these glaring biases, right? That they're only counting the initial filing by the spouse who initially filed for divorce, right? And they're not counting any of the counter claims, counter filings, right? They're not counting any of that, right? Even when they include all of the biases, they still find that women are 60% more likely to get some level of custody than men are, right? So
and the article is titled "Misrepresentation of Gender Bias" in the 1989 report of the Gender Bias Committee of the Massachusetts Supreme Court. Yeah. So what you would be looking up would be breakingthescience.org, misrepresentation of gender bias in the 1989 report, and you would probably find that article just from looking that up.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, his background is like some kind of weird aqua blue.
Yeah, it is. I've got it up on my screen right now.
But the information, like he breaks it down perfectly. Like even if you just ignore the biases in the data collection that they were using, right? It does not say the data that they cherry picked doesn't even say what they claim it says.
No, it's actually the people who he had to fight to get this data too, by the way.
Oh yeah.
But he specifically wrote the rate at which the mother's requests for sole custody were granted was 65% higher than the rate at which the father's requests for sole custody were granted. And the rate at which primary physical custody was granted to mothers who sought sole custody is somewhere between 73.8% and 95% higher. The bottom end of that range is higher than the 69.8% for fathers. And that's the other thing that happens with mothers can go for custody with very few resources, because once there's a separation, if they already have custody of the kids, the father is already having to pay child support. So his
maybe even her
resources
legal expenses
are reduced. And in some states, actually, I think in most states now, they just start garnishing wages. They don't mess around. And so his resources are being taken. And I will tell you this, for any guy who is not upper class or wealthy, the remainder that's left over after the amount the state's allowed to garnish, in Ohio, it's like 60%. After the state takes its 60%, and then the state takes out their taxes out of the remainder, the taxation on the full paycheck out of the remainder of the check, and the federal government takes the taxation on the full check out of the remainder of the check, and your Medicare costs and everything out of that. You have, if you're lucky, you have about 15% of your gross pay left. If you are not wealthy, 15% isn't even enough to pay your water bill, much less hire a lawyer.
Yeah, no, with in BC, they can take 80% of everything other than a welfare check. 80%.
Take it out of disability here.
Yeah, no, disability, disability, unemployment insurance, right? Any kind of anything but an actual welfare check, they can take 80% of your tax returns, your tax rebates.
They can impute income to increase the amount that that you owe. So I've talked to guys online that have been jailed because their welfare check or their disability check, and the worst is the disability check, was not enough to cover what the judge thought they should be making, and they were ordered to make more money, go into the courtroom in a wheelchair with oxygen tanks, and have the judge say,
well, you used to work on a fishing boat and make $13,000 a month, so
no, there must be something you can do, sir. Your children need support. There must be something you can do, sir. The wife is perfectly able-bodied, right? It's the 21st century, but she's not expected to do more work. She's not expected to get a better job. But if the father has custody and he is asking for child support from the mother, I have seen judges tell men, "You're a man, get another job." Right. And you know, if you have an issue with childcare, well, don't you have a wife? They don't say to women, "Don't you have a husband?" So when
don't these
they
kids have a
talk
father?
about how easy it supposedly is for fathers to get custody and for fathers to manipulate the court system, no, they have judges who are to deal with who are biased because of their own ideology, and then they're also biased because of training they get from the court. They're from the court system. They're biased because of training they get that's funded by the Violence Against Women Act, and they're also biased because of training they get that is legislated by what used to be the best, or the I can't remember what it was called before, best interest of the child, but it basically the tender years doctrine. And the tender years doctrine was written into I think it was called the Telford Act. That they switched to the best interest of the child later, but there's a footnote in the law that says best interest of the child is to be with the mother. The tender years doctrine.
No, and it's like, okay, why was that the case? Why was that the case? Well, because a husband, a father, would have to hire a wet nurse, right? But the mother's serving the drinks for free, right? And
well, and you also but the standard was created in law in countries that were guided by English common law, which the United
Yeah.
States was when it first started,
Yeah.
because a woman argued to the House of Lords
Mm-hmm.
that mothers are better parents at that age because God said so.
Yeah.
In a country where we are supposed to have freedom of religion, and where the church is not supposed to run the state, and the state is not supposed to establish a church, we are still using law and policy in our family court system that, and I'm saying this as a Christian, this is wrong. The
Mhm.
church and the state must be separated, because the state should never be allowed to control the church, and the state should never be allowed to impose your denomination, your church, your religion, nothing. That should be between an individual and God. But the state is making these decisions on the basis of God said so.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and it's infuriating too, because it's like you have this situation where in a lot of cases, right? So when I was with my ex, right? Initially, right? And I was pregnant with my first child, and and my stepsons told their mom, right? And then she immediately sued to up the child support for her kids, right? And she was living in a $350,000 house. This is like in 1994, and she had just spent, her and her new husband had just spent like $35,000 lifting the house so that they could have a full basement rather than just a crawl space, and like two late model cars parked in the driveway. She had like professional manicures and her hair done and all of that professionally, and here I am like cutting my husband's hair, cutting my own hair, right? Because I can't afford the $10 for a haircut. And so she takes us to court to raise the child support, because she knows that when that baby's born, right? Okay. Like I had an income still, right? And so his income and my income could be rolled together, right? So now
Mhm.
he's in a better position to be able to pay a larger amount, even though they don't technically count the new wife's income. They do consider it in terms of his capacity to pay. Okay. So, and that would change the moment the baby was born, right? And so she takes us to court, and we managed to get a case conference with a mediator. And the mediator looked at her financial statement and our financial statement and said, "Lady, you got to be kidding," and reduce the child support, put us on a program to do like back pay, like because he was in arrears when he was unemployed, and got us on a repayment plan, catch up, right, all of that, and yeah, she was really not happy about that. When my kid was 5 months old, right, she phones, she's complaining that the child support is late. Okay, I'm like, well, because your sons are here for fall break. Okay, they're here for 2 weeks, and we have to feed them, and so it's going to be a little bit late. And she says, "Isn't it time you went back to work?" She wasn't even working. I was like, "What do you need the money for?" She says, "Well, I need it to keep their daycare spots open." I'm like, "Why are they in fucking daycare?
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't work. You're a stay-at-home mom."
Let's
Well, see,
let's
that's,
watch the rest of this.
it's a little
Let-
different in the United States.
Yeah.
Your judge sounded like there was some common sense there, right?
Yeah, well, they'd only just changed the law.
My husband was divorced when we got together, and his ex-wife was allowed to get more child support because she quit her job, and then get more child support because she had babies with another man. They weren't my husband's kids. They
Yep.
were her second husband's kids.
Yeah.
And then she was allowed to get more child support because I brought in more income. And that's the same standard.
Yeah, no, and
Your
and
ability to pay, his ability to pay is increased, and therefore, and his responsibility for his son goes down because my income goes up, so they can take more of his income. And all of that changed. All of those changes took place without judge's orders. The Child Support Enforcement Agency just makes these decisions, and you have to sue to get them overturned. And then on top of that,
with what
one
money?
year when we filed jointly for our taxes, I got this letter in the mail that said I had to sign that they could take my tax refund for the arrears that they had imposed on him because of those changes taking place. Right?
You know what they did?
And
you know what
let
they
me
did to
finish,
me?
please. When I continued, communicating with them about this, because I'm like, we were already in financial dire straits because of all of this. Like, literally, I was the only one bringing in money, and I was the only one paying the bills at that point, and I was working 3 jobs to do that. And so I said, I can't afford to give up my tax refund. And she said, well, here's how this goes. If you don't sign a consent letter, we will come and we will take your husband to jail for non-payment of child support. And I'm like, you're garnishing it out of his check. He's paying child support. And she said, yes, but we have put him in arrears. And she admitted he wasn't in arrears because he wasn't paying. He was in arrears because they decided to increase what he owed based on income that wasn't his and children that were not his. And she said, we can do that, and we can put him in jail if you don't consent. And I asked her, how's it consent if you're threatening me? Oh, I'm not coercing you. We're not going to put you in jail. You're not under any threat at all. No, I'm not under any threat at all. Just threat of being responsible for a man being put in jail that I happen to love more than anything in the world. And that's how they do this so everything that he's going through, everything that Mr. Younger is going through is consistent with what I have seen with the family courts.
Oh, yeah.
This isn't the exception. What we're looking at in this video, this is the rule. And the only reason people are paying attention to this right now, the only reason that the right is paying attention to this right now is because it involves gender transitioning.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because now it's about LGBT issues, right?
Yeah.
Now it's political. But when thousands of men across the country were committing suicide because their children were being denied access to their fathers, and they were being bankrupted and threatened with homelessness and jail for not earning more money than they could earn, or for not being able to be the turnip that you can squeeze blood out of.
Yeah.
Right? Nobody cared. In fact, part of the reason my husband ended up in arrears in the first place was because of the Welfare Reform Act of 2000, where they decided to go after the ex-husband or father of a child if a single mother was on welfare. And so as soon as that act, they knew that act was in the pipes, it was going to pass, Ohio passed a law that all men who owed child support had to pay through the state. And if you didn't pay through the state, it didn't count. And then they made it retroactive for a year. So all the men in Ohio that had been paying directly with checks to their wives, even if it said child support on the check, that money didn't count. And there was no recourse to prove, like, prove you paid that money. Oh, well, that was a nice gift. And you still owe this money, and now you're in arrears for a year. And it took men years to pay that back because they were paying their child support. But now you're having to pay on top of your child support. And there are men so there were men all over Ohio who went through what my husband went through. And we wrote to every politician we could think of explaining it is wrong to take a second time from men and say, you didn't pay this when they actually did. And it's wrong for the state to punish them for something that is imposed retroactively after they obeyed the law and say, well, we're going to criminalize you anyway.
Yep.
And nobody cared. Not one Republican, not one Democrat, not one independent. None of them cared. Nobody cared until it was a gender issue, right? Nobody cared until it was feminists pushing too far. And that's wrong. Feminists pushed too far when they fought joint custody in the first place.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, I got a
Okay.
super chow. I want to read, and then we'll look at some more of this. So, Great Indoors gives us $5 and says, again, I want to redirect you to the Wikipedia page of a woman named or called Jenna Sudds, Sudds, the current Canadian Minister of Families, Children, and Social Development, which, if you scroll down on that page, contains the following quote, she supported legislation to ban the practice of conversion therapy, which passed the House of Commons in a unanimous vote, end quote. Please click on the hyperlink of the term conversion therapy and read the definition of conversion therapy on the top of that page. So I guess he's asking me to like hijack the show and look this up. So give me a second here.
Well,
Well,
what his wife is doing to the child is conversion therapy. It's just in the opposite direction.
They're basically saying that if you try to talk a kid out of doing something completely fucking stupid and irreversible, you're committing conversion therapy. If you even suggest waiting, just wait a little while and see if you feel better.
Yeah.
Right? That's conversion therapy.
Yeah, I still argue
here.
that it's conversion therapy.
Okay.
If you
conversion therapy, here's what it says: the Wikipedia definition of conversion therapy. Conversion therapy is the pseudoscientific practice, that's already a red flag, of attempting to change an individual's sexual orientation, romantic orientation, gender identity, or cisgender expression to align with heterosexual and cisgender norms.
See, that sentence is too long. The last part, they can drop that off, and then it would be accurate.
Yeah, but they don't want to be accurate, Hannah. They want to. They want to engineer kids to be gay and trans. That's why they're calling it pseudoscientific. The pseudoscientific practice of being normal.
Yeah, it is. It would be pseudoscientific if it was admitted that. It wasn't just this didn't just apply when they try to teach somebody that they're gay that they're not gay, or somebody that's trans that they're not trans, instead of treating the condition of dysphoria. But when they have
thank
somebody
you, Great Indoors. My disappointment is immeasurable and my day is ruined.
When they have somebody that's straight or who doesn't identify as trans, and they try to talk them into believing that they're gay or bisexual or trans or any of 72 other gender identities that are personality quirks that have now become identities, that's also conversion therapy. And adding the last bit to that definition to not admit that is also conversion therapy is bullshit.
Yeah,
what they're talking about is gaslighting.
Yeah, no, it's effectively okay. If your kid comes out as gay, right? You can tell them, okay, well, that doesn't require medical intervention, so all right, your life's going to be a little more complicated, but okay. Yeah, no, but
the same rules apply for dating as if you were straight. You still have to be just as careful about people.
Yeah, you have to be careful about who you sleep with, who you date. Like
same as if you were dating the opposite sex.
Yeah, and like, okay, so if you're a gay boy, you don't have to worry about getting anyone knocked up, but you do have to worry about like bug chasers and people intentionally trying to infect other people with HIV and things like that, because that does exist, right? You warn your kids, right? You warn them of the dangers, right? But trans, I'm gonna need you to
to wait a while.
Wait. Yeah, no, we're gonna wait. We're gonna see if we can talk this through. Because you know what? Hey, kiddo, you're 13. Okay? By the time you're 18, you might change your mind. A lot of kids who thought they were the opposite sex at age 13, who thought they might want to transition, change their minds at 18 or 19 or 20 or 21, right? They change their minds and they're like, oh, actually, I'm just gay.
Some of the actual most heartbreaking videos to watch, people talk about their experience as young people are detransitioners.
Oh God, yeah.
And what they went through in treatment, and then what they went through
What they
in
lost
the detransitioning
permanently.
process,
Yeah.
as they were beginning to understand what was done to them,
Oh yeah.
and
no.
what they can never get back.
Yeah, no, it's
And-
Chloe Cole cut her
God,
boobs
yeah.
off, right? She took testosterone for a while. She doesn't know if she's ever going to be able to have a baby. She does know she won't ever be able to breastfeed it.
The
right?
one that made me cry was there were girls that have had the whole equipment removed, everything, no uterus,
Yeah.
no nothing. They will
Yeah.
never be able to have kids.
Yep.
And then there's one that talked about now she has male pattern baldness, and she's
Yep.
detransitioning, but that's never going to go away.
Yeah, no,
And-
and then there's the one with oh God, he was on Benjamin Boyce's channel, and he took puberty blockers and got an orchidectomy, and like got castrated, and did all of the estrogen therapy and everything, right? And then when he was like, I don't know, 20 or something, he changed his mind, and it's like, okay, so now you're on testosterone therapy for your entire life, but the window of puberty has closed,
and there's
right?
no getting it back.
There's no restarting puberty.
And anything that's been removed, there's no getting it back.
Yeah, there's no getting your testicles back. And there's no turning your neo-vagina back into a penis. And like you're going to be of short stature for the rest of your life. You're going to have a feminine appearance for the rest of your life, right? You're going to look like a kind of awkward young woman for the rest of your life, right? No matter how much testosterone you take, because the window has closed for those changes, right? For you to actually be able to take the testosterone, your voice might get a little deeper, but your skeleton's already formed. It's not going to be changing, right? So I'm just like, I was listening to him talking, and I was just like, I just felt so unbelievably sad for this young man, right?
It actually makes me angry about the people in the medical community that are doing this, because
it makes you mad. It makes me think, freaking Luigi took his anger out on the wrong fucking target.
It's no different really to me than what's his name from Nazi Germany that Mengele that experimented on children.
Yeah.
This is the same thing. When they're doing this to people who are not old enough to make their decision themselves, and they're talking them into it, they're conning them into it, they're grooming them into it, and then they make this journey, this medical journey that involves all this pain and suffering.
And there's no payoff at the end, right? Because like the thing that the bargain that they always give the parents is, do you want a dead son or a living daughter, right? Or vice versa, right? Do you want a dead daughter or a living son? And the parents, they cave to that emotional blackmail, right? Because they think it's the truth. It's not the truth. Suicide rates increase after transition. Right?
Yep.
That didn't used to be the case when you had to like freaking do 5 or 10 years of psychotherapy and like be really sure before you actually were allowed to medically transition. Right? Yeah, no, that didn't used to be the case, but it's the case now because you got all these kids who've been groomed into thinking, oh, well, this will be great, like I could be a boy, and I'll be able to do boy stuff. Yeah, you can already do boy stuff. What's stopping you?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
It's really bad.
Yeah.
Oh.
Let's play the next time code. This is him talking about another judge in California.
Oh, God.
Walks out. The clerks at the LA County Courthouse completely deleted all my records. My lawyer could not access them. I could not access them. Nobody could access them. Except, interestingly, opposing counsel, the one who sent the text, could still access them. So that's the first thing weird that happened. My entire record was deleted. They have a way of keeping it offline so you can only get paper copies. They have a way of protecting the paper copies. We have to get permission from a judge. They didn't do that. They actually deleted it. So that happens. Then they collapse all 3 of those judicial functions into one judge, Mark Uhas, who's my trial court judge. So now he's the supervising judge, the home court judge, and the trial judge.
Now, it used to be 3 different judges, so they basically just gave all this to one judge, an activist judge, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So let's keep going.
He rules that the records are sealed, the case is sealed, and no one may enter the courtroom except me, the lawyers, and expert witnesses. So the public was denied the right to view the trial. No one saw what they did to me in there.
Borat.
So they also
What's
made
wrong
it to
now?
where the trial, no one's allowed to be in there except for the parties involved. So this
Yeah.
wasn't available
This is
to
a
the public.
common thing.
Yeah.
Like this is common practice in cases where they are going to alienate one of the parents in a child custody case, and it's usually used when the other parent is alleging abuse where abuse didn't actually happen, and they use the excuse that the privacy of the child
Yeah.
supersedes the right of the parent to a fair trial.
Yeah.
And so, among other things, in family court, criminal allegations can be made that if you were in criminal court, you could not be found guilty for those allegations without the allegation being proved beyond a reasonable doubt. But in family court, the allegation has to be made, and then you have to prove that
That you
you are
didn't do it.
innocent
Yeah.
in order for that allegation to not affect your right to custody and visitation and how much child support you pay and what you're allowed to talk about, whether your visitation is going to be supervised and all of that. And that's consistent across the entire country. I believe it's also that way in Canada, the UK, most
The
of
UK,
Europe
the UK, all family court proceedings are closed
are
to the
private,
public.
right?
Yeah.
And so if an individual goes into court and abuses the system by engaging in vexatious litigation where she has filed a bunch of false charges against her partner, which you don't even have to file in criminal court. All you have to do is go in to family court and say, he hit me,
Or he raped me.
or he raped me, or
He's
he
abusing the
yells at
kids.
me all the time.
Or
I'm
abusing-
afraid of him.
He's
don't
abusing
even-
the kids. Yeah.
You don't even have to say he's abusing the kids. All you have to do is say you're afraid of him. And
Yeah.
he is on his back foot. He has to debunk what you said, or and he has limited recourse to do that. There's a lot of evidence judges won't accept. Judges can just refuse to look at his evidence. Judges can refuse to let him talk about it, refuse to let him answer those complaints because it's not a criminal case, but they can still use it against him. And so men are subject to all of this. and women are not, and women use it. There are actually books that you can buy. These have been on the shelves of bookstores since back in the day before there was such a thing as an online bookstore, right? Like you used to be able to walk into Walden Books back in the day, and some of the other big chains that don't exist anymore. And there it would be. I even remember the cover had a wine glass and a pair of high-heeled shoes on it. And it was called something like The Method, or and it would had this laid out this whole thing. Oh, if you're going through a divorce and you want property, custody, you want him out of the house, accuse him of domestic violence.
Yep.
And it was specific, not violence against the children, violence against the mother. Say you're afraid of him, get a restraining order. And it laid out this whole, and I've seen The Method used against men that I know personally. And it took 7 years to stop a woman who was getting frivolous restraining orders and using police departments in 4 different communities in 2 different counties over and over again, making false allegations that ranged from as serious as rape, which was disproved 3 times before they finally dropped it, to accusing him of a drive-by greeting.
Yeah, I remember that.
Waving menacingly, which I'm assuming looked kind of like this. But she had told a judge she would be out of town for 3 weeks and couldn't attend a child support hearing. And then in the middle of that 3 weeks, he allegedly drove past a bar in town where she was and waved menacingly. And, like that kind of thing happens. What he's going through is terrible. And what he is experiencing is consistent with everything that I've seen. The only difference is that it involves transitioning his child. And now people are outraged. But I keep saying this. The groundwork for this was laid by people who treat men as always accountable, always responsible, never having any rights, never the good guy, always the bad guy, who emphasize terms like deadbeat dad when a mother kicks a father out of the house, takes all of his money, takes all of his property, and then wants more and he can't give it.
Yeah.
But they won't use the term deadbeat mom when a woman screws around with 23 different guys and has 6 kids and doesn't have a father at home for any of them, and doesn't have a job and is on welfare and spends the money on getting her hair and nails done instead of feeding her kids.
Yeah.
Right. So and then the other end of it,
sparkly new boots. Yeah.
The other end of it, the other people that are pissed off about this that laid the groundwork is radfems. You motherfuckers. You laid the groundwork for this. When you laid the groundwork for girls to get abortions in school, for their guidance counselor to take them to get an abortion without parental consent, without notification of the parents. Now you're mad that girls are being transitioned. This is your fault. You did this.
No. They did it even before that. They did it by basically arguing that gender was a social construct.
Oh, no. Radfems didn't argue that. That was the intersectional feminists.
No.
Radfems argue that women are superior to men.
Yeah, no. Radfems argue that women are a specific biological class, and they would be equal to men in every way. Right, in terms of earnings, career choices, right? All of those things. They would be equal. There would be 50-50 parity in every aspect of society, except for the fact that girls are socialized, right, in a certain way, and boys are socialized in a different way, and therefore gender. Radfems were the first to enter that gender stopped at the neck.
That wasn't Radfems that came up with gender as a social construct. They came up with the idea that the Y chromosome was a mistake. That gender doesn't maybe stop people from being strong enough and valid enough to do everything that men do. That gender maybe doesn't change what people should earn. But then at the same time, they also argued that by being biologically male, men are more violent, men are more prone to criminal behavior, men are less intelligent than women and all kinds of stuff like that. They have always believed in it's intersectional feminists that argued that gender was a social construct and you can identify as whatever you want to, and anything that applies to one sex applies to the other sex, and so on. And they've hated each other as much as openly communist feminists versus choice feminists who don't know that they're part of a communist psyop. That the whole time
They're
that
just
they've
the
existed.
controlled opposition.
Yeah, they're just the controlled opposition. Yeah, choice feminists, your feminism isn't even real.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah.
I got a super chow I should read, and then we got to look at the next time code. But Zeranx gave us $5 and says, given the story Hannah just told, I am beyond double plus convinced that mere law reform in marriage is a cuckold position. Getting government out of marriage, family, and children is the only way to go. Allowing a necessary evil, which is what even the founders of the U.S. believe government to be, to have any tendril in interpersonal relationships down to the vaginal canal, as the government can force child support on men who aren't even related to the gestation of a pregnancy, as was the case with Carnal Alexander in Michigan, is unjust. Finishing super chow, sorry, on job site. That was a super chat that was added to the super chow for another $2. Thank you for that, Zeranx. Yes, I agree. I think that it's a sacrament, and it shouldn't be like a legal thing, because that's how you get into this mess. So yeah,
the word marriage shouldn't be on any government document.
The only I guess at the
the word the phrase civil union can go on a government document. And when you get married, your church can call it a marriage, your family can call it a marriage, you can call it a marriage, doesn't matter. But when you sign a contract with your partner for property ownership and custody and stuff like that.
We just need to figure out a new way to do it when it comes to immigration. That's all I was going to say. Go ahead.
I was going to say that should be something that up front, you should be able to determine what you agree on, and then you're held to the contract. And being female shouldn't get you out of the contract. Alleging abuse shouldn't get you out of the contract, right? Nothing that wouldn't get you out of a contract that you signed with somebody to fix the roof on your house should get you out of the contract that you signed to jointly own property and to jointly take financial responsibility for your children.
Yep.
And as far as authority over your children, there should be no contract you can make to take away somebody's authority. A parent should have to go through a criminal case in order to have their custody taken away. All right. A government should have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that a parent is harmful to the child before they can take custody.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's play some more of this.
And this is really important, and the judge probably had to do this to prevent himself from being prosecuted. So there's a whole network of court watchers in family court, and here's what we found. Some of them will secretly record. They're not supposed to, but they'll secretly record the proceedings. Then we get the court reporter's record, and it doesn't match the audio recording.
Yep.
And it happens all the time. All the time. The judges are instructing the court reporters to alter the record to prevent an appeal. And a lot of times these judges are committing felonies on the bench by violating criminal statutes. That won't be in the record. One of the things in my written record that's a lot, they just put 3 dots and say they couldn't hear me. They couldn't hear me. So I made objections which were important on appeal, but they don't show in the record because the court reporter couldn't hear me. So that's why he had to keep people out of the court, to prevent illicit recording, because he knew very well what he was going to do. And sure enough, right off the bat, he denies me an independent medical exam. So the medical status of this child is the fundamental issue, right? The medical and psychological status of the child. He denies me an independent medical exam. He denies me an independent psychological exam. And the other side didn't even have to give me evidence in discovery, which violates the Discovery Act in California and is grounds for disbarment.
Yep.
I didn't get any discovery in my.
I'm just
Who was
pausing
it
there
in,
just for the banana.
In the Red Pill movie, who was it whose son wanted to lose weight and he was having
That was Fred Hayward.
Hayward.
Yeah,
That was Fred Hayward. Yeah.
You remember what happened in that case where he
Mhm.
was losing weight at dad's house and gaining it back at mom's house, and so the judge, seeing that the child was having unhealthy practices at the mother's house and healthy practices at the father's house, ordered that the father stop weighing the child.
Yep.
Yep. You could no longer track it. Okay,
Right.
let's finish this clip. There's like 1 minute left in this.
Case. But I had to provide discovery. I provide over 1,000 pages of discovery. That's a lot of work, a week's worth of work. So right off the bat, he goes down this road. Then I noticed a change in him, and I think somebody on the appellate court got to him and said, you're being so unfair to the guy. I don't know that if he comes up here, we'll have to rule for him because it looks so bad right now. So then he became scrupulously fair after that. And let me make my case. I destroyed their witnesses. Then when he comes out with his ruling, he basically removes the gag order, the illegal gag order, because in California, apparently in the appellate court, that's just not going to stand here. They allow free speech here, so that's it. I even, in a very funny moment in the court, forced him to admit that right-wing speech was free speech. He really didn't want to do that, but that was pretty fun.
Can you imagine right-wing speech is also free speech? Like what does it even mean? Like what does it even mean, right-wing speech, right? But like that was like where we are. That's where we are now. We have to make the case for that. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Funny. So he takes that gag order off. Then he still keeps me on supervised visitation, but he now says phone calls have to be supervised. So a phone call to my kid's going to cost me $500, right?
Oh
And
my fucking God.
he says she doesn't have to give the kids your letters. And if you send presents, she doesn't have to give them to the kids.
That's
Okay,
legalized parental alienation, by the way.
Yeah. 100%.
Good Lord. Okay, there's 20 seconds left in this clip, I think.
And she doesn't have to tell you anything about their medical or educational or anything. You don't get any notifications at all. So that's what happened. So we go through some post-trial litigation after. They're trying to get me to pay, I think, $99,000 in legal fees and all this stuff. It's really about, the family court is really about getting the father to fund all the litigation.
Yep.
Because they want the father to go away.
All right. So
Yeah,
that's that clip about the court.
He's got to pay his fees and her fees.
Yep. And they'll do that for everything from litigation that was initiated by the mother because she wanted more child support to litigation that was initiated by the father because he wanted more custody. It doesn't matter who's at fault for the court case. And it doesn't matter who is decided in favor. Even when there were times when she went for things and was denied, they wanted my husband to pay extra for her her trouble.
Costs.
Like he didn't even initiate the case, right? So it's insane. They just assume that women are inept in family court when it comes to anything financial, and they just assume that men are inept when it comes to anything to do with child rearing.
All right.
Okay, so that's I know
I have to,
you gotta go soon. How much time do you have? Okay, we got
About
2
10
more
minutes.
sound. Okay, we got enough time. Let's just keep it simple. This is the good stuff, though. Okay, so he's going to talk about some things that were revealed regarding the funding towards the transgender movement. So here we go. What he's discovered, at least
Legally, are there repercussions for you?
Yeah. So what happened was the case got moved to LA County. And I wound up in Department 63 under Judge Mark Uhas. And right from the very beginning, some very strange things happened in this case. So I had a federal case going on. And it was just to seek declaratory relief to relieve me of the unconstitutional gag order. There was a mistake made. You know the MoFo law firm?
I don't.
Morris Forster? They are the most powerful law firm in California. They represent Google, Facebook, and all those people. That's the law firm I was facing. Their retainers are astronomical. So I've always known that my wife was getting help from somewhere, but because it's so much money, like how can she afford? The retainers on the lawyers in Texas, the law firm is Coons Fuller, their minimum retainer is $175,000, minimum. And they triple that going to trial. Like, so she's spending $500,000 every time she sues me, and she sued me over and I've been in a continuous lawsuit for 11 years. So imagine, she spent millions of dollars. Where's this money coming from?
So his wife just had
Activist
millions of
group.
dollars.
It's all coming from
she's-
activist
She's
groups.
getting, well, that's not all. I mean, it's probably not going to be surprising, but let's
Yeah.
listen where she's getting this money for these massive lawsuits to afford these extremely high-profile firms over this particular case.
Well, I learned this in the federal lawsuit. Once I had moved to California, I filed in the Central District with the federal court to get rid of this gag order. And the MoFo lawyer, MoFo is Morris Forster, so that's actually their website, mofo.com. So sends an email, and I think there were a number of lawyers copied in this email. I think those lawyers should have been in the BCC field, the blind copy field, but they were in the CC field, and I think it was a mistake. And they were lawyers from nonprofit NGOs that are funded by USAID and George Soros.
Oh,
Yep. All those activist organizations. USAID, the USAID system, which I like to call USAIDs, has done stuff like this all over the United States, all over Europe, all over Africa, Canada
Well, I was-
has been
Middle East.
targeted.
I was
South
expecting.
America has been. There is not a nation in the world that has not been infected with USAIDs.
Okay, I was expecting Soros. I was not necessarily expecting USAID.
Oh my gosh, you haven't been following the USAID
Actually,
controversy.
there's more.
I
There's
have.
more.
I
Oh,
have.
There's more.
I knew.
But
as
I
soon
thought
as,
they-
as soon
I
as
thought
you
that they
said there
were
was
just-
more, Brian.
I thought that they were just about foreign soft
Oh,
power.
no. And then on top of USAIDs, there's also DOJ funding, Department of Justice, DOD funding that is targeting the people of the United States with social stuff like this.
DHS.
the Department of, there's two, DHS and DHHS. So the Department of Health and Human Services is doing it, and the Department of Homeland Security is doing it. Every three-letter agency is getting funding to target the people of the United States and every other nation in the world with this kind of propaganda and PSYOP and so on. Like, this has been our tax dollars here in the United States, and our children's tax dollars, future tax dollars, and our grandchildren's and our great-grandchildren's have all been dedicated to this shit for as long as Gen Xers has been alive. There have been organizations that have been doing this for longer than Gen Xers have been alive.
Mm-hmm. And there's more. So let's take a listen.
So it became very apparent to me at that point why it was so politically difficult to get the law passed in Texas and so forth. So let me now explain a little bit of the background about how Republicans actually started the transgender movement.
Yes, there are Republicans that started this as well.
Mhm.
Not Trump Republicans, not MAGA people, but like neocons.
Progressive
Let's-
Republicans.
Yeah. Let's listen.
So the largest donor to the Republican Party today is a guy named Paul Singer. And Paul Singer founded the Human Rights Campaign. You know, the yellow equal sign? Yeah, a Republican founded that, not a Democrat. And he also runs the Manhattan Institute, completely funds it, which is a prominent conservative think tank. He funds the Claremont Institute and is a substantial donor to the Heritage Foundation. So he has a lot of say over what these people do. He's deeply committed to the transgender issue and funded lawsuits for it all over the country, created the framework for corporations to the scoring system for gay and transgender people that are used for investments, you know, like Vanguard and all these big investment things, whether they're going to invest in buy your stock or not.
The ESG, like that.
Yeah.
So, you know, the whole ESG DEI thing, they're the scoring system that these like giant, what even is BlackRock? Like, you know, they just hold your money, I guess. They're like a bank, you know.
They invest your money.
Yeah. So anyway,
invented all that stuff. So he's the largest donor to the Republican Party. He's the largest out-of-state donor to politicians in Texas. So that's what I'm actually fighting here.
So that I thought that was fascinating. I don't know if you guys want to say anything about this. I have one more clip and then we're done. So
Okay.
do you guys have any? Go ahead.
No.
Do you want me to just jump to that? Okay.
Yeah.
So let's go 1 hour and 3 minutes in. Like right here. Start from here.
If I could ever agree to any transgender operation, it would be to cut Wiener out of the California Senate. That guy needs to go. He's going to be our main obstacle. He's politically powerful because he's a donation magnet for big donors who want to push this stuff. Guys like Paul Singer and guys like George Soros. I do think I got some benefit from President Trump's executive order. I was working with his staff and was in contact with them about this, and they promised me that he would do it in the first month, and they did it in the first 3 weeks. It's actually the first time elected officials ever kept a promise to me. And I do think James is not on cross-sex hormones yet.
So James Younger, James is his son, James Younger, the kid that his mom put on puberty blockers. So he's not on cross-sex hormones yet.
Maybe.
But okay. As far as
he's legally, he's not supposed to be, in other words.
Mm-hmm.
So
legally,
if she is doing
this guy's not allowed to know.
Yeah, if she is doing it, she'd have to be doing it behind his back.
Yeah.
And Children's Hospital has said after Trump's order that if you're already on a treatment plan, we'll keep doing it, but we're not putting any new kids on it. So it may prevent my son from getting cross-sex hormones. And why is that important? If you look at the statistics, every child that goes into cross-sex hormones, 100% of them go to surgery.
Yep.
100%. It alters the brain and it alters things sufficiently that all of them go to surgery.
It also
so keeping my son off
the sunken cost fallacy. We've gone this far. And we've done so
might
much.
As well go the whole 9 yards
now. Yeah.
Yep.
Cross-sex hormones is my main focus right now. I'm going to also work with 2 senators who have already introduced bills to allow children who have been victimized by these procedures with a 30-year statute of limitations, because we don't know the long-term effects of this stuff, to sue the clinics. That long statute of limitations would be enough for most clinics to shut it down because it's too risky legally. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to get Senator Hawley to modify his bill in the federal Congress to allow parents to sue as well.
Yeah.
And that's what Trump's executive order calls for. So the Trump has directed the agencies to work with the Congress to make that happen. So all the agencies will assist me in doing that. And I'll be there next month in DC working on that.
That's the clip. So,
all right.
What we're seeing happen now is the beginning of the cure for U.S. AIDS.
Yeah.
Like, this is a serious worldwide epidemic.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I explained
Need
this.
a little. It's gonna need a little more than AZT.
But it's now under the humanitarian initiative VAIL, so HIV. The U.S. federal bureaucracy has attacked various nation systems of immunity against foreign cultural invasion, and damaging exploitation intended to stifle healthy economic growth, damaging family and therefore cultural stability, and divert national resources for the use of the invasive parasite nation and its subsidiary organizations. That would be the United States and the other corporate entities, because every nation is a corporate entity, that are exploiting the U.S. Taxpayer and the U.S. federal government and its power. When that exploitative system becomes established and entrenched, the symptoms may include sudden depletion of local resources, rashes of organizational activity within local communities, diversion of public services to serve the purposes of the invading parasite nation, corruption of existing cultural norms, lesions upon family relationships, sterilization of local men and children, increase in mental illness, woke syndromes among local populations, and chronic pain in the neck behavior by foreign nationals whose organizations have entered your nation to repurpose your social services systems as a tool of social manipulation against your people. Any of these symptoms is evidence that your infection via the U.S. humanitarian initiative VAIL has become active, manifesting as full-blown U.S. AIDS system or U.S. AIDS. Currently, the only treatment for this infectious attack seems to be populist therapy at the source, U.S. federal bureaucracy, which is currently being administered. It's going to be a long course of treatment, which will require a lot of work, but we have hope that a cure for this terrible infection is forthcoming, and this is what we're seeing right now.
All right.
Well,
On
I don't know. Do you
that
have any
note-
final thoughts, Karen, or was just
No, on that note, I think that was kind of a mic drop, and I don't care to follow it. This guy is like he's been in the trenches for years, and I wish him every. If I was the praying sort, I would be praying for him.
Yeah,
and I just want it to stop. I just want children to stop being intentionally made mentally ill and physically non-viable.
Yeah.
Right? Like I said, I have told lots of radio show hosts and stuff, right? If I was a tomboy when I was growing up, if an adult in a position of trust had come up to me at age 5 and said, "I see you really prefer the Legos to the Barbie dolls, right? Have you ever thought that maybe you're actually a boy?" Maybe I wouldn't have 3 kids right now. 3 kids that I love right now, right? Maybe I would have gotten so confused and so messed up. It might have actually, even just that suggestion of it being an option might have given me gender dysphoria.
Yep.
Even though my parents were perfectly happy buying me Legos and dinky cars, right? And letting me wear jeans instead of dresses. Right? They were perfectly happy with me wanting to help dad fix the car rather than mom bake bread, right? They were perfectly happy with all of that. But just because I was that way, maybe some fucking adult in my school, in my kindergarten class, might have come up to me and made a suggestion to me that would have made me think, oh, well, maybe I actually am a boy and maybe I should become a boy and there's something wrong with the body I was born in. And now I'm all fucked up. So.
Yeah. I guess the bottom line here is Jeff Younger really loves his son. and he doesn't
Oh,
want
yeah.
that to be done to him. He doesn't want his son to be medically abused.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
All right.
anyway,
Well, we're gonna
go.
wrap it up. Yep. I will go ahead and take us out now. So thanks guys for coming on the show. Thank you to Karen and Hannah for joining me. And I wish Jeff Younger all the best, and I hope he continues to fight. And I'm really happy to see that he's got some people like Trump's cabinet and Josh Hawley in his corner. And I just want to see, him win for a change. And I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. If you're going to watch the full video, I put a link to it in the description. Consider subscribing to our channel as well as Soft White Underbelly. It is a pretty good channel. They do lots of interviews with people that you normally don't get to hear from, and you get to see some unique perspectives. But anyway, with all that said, if you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, leave us a comment, let us know what you guys think about what we discussed on the show today, and please, please, please share this video because sharing is caring. Thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of the Rantzerker, and we'll talk to you guys in the next one.